In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Ilford's FP4+. FP4 is a bit of a slower film at 125 ISO, but what it lacks in speed, it makes up for in sharpness and fine grain. For a bit of backstory on this film, it was originally introduced as Ilford FP, which stood for Fine Grain Panchromatic. The film has gone through a couple changes since then to become what we now know as FP4+. I usually test my film in a couple different developers, that way I'm making sure the results are fairly universal, and for this one I did Xtol 1:1 and HC110 Dilution B. Side by side, the results are pretty similar between the two developers, so I won't point out the differences. Usually HC110 has more density in the highlights and more contrast, with Xtol having a flatter image. The first detail that I'd like to start out with for FP4 is the grain. FP4 is a traditional grain film as opposed to a T grain, and one of the benefits of traditional grain films is that they usually have a better highlight gradation than their T grain counterparts. And although FP4 is a traditional grain film, it still has exceptionally fine grain because this is a film that is meant for big enlargements. So you can get really close to the image and the grain is pretty much invisible. The grain on this film is so fine that it doesn't obscure the details of the image whatsoever. You can see every detail on the surface of the body, even the tiny bits of dust in the arms and shoulders. The next detail I'd like to focus on is the film's sharpness. The film has an incredibly crisp quality to it that renders very sharp, impressive detail. The next thing I'd like to briefly touch on is the film's wide exposure latitude. Wide exposure latitude means the ability of a film to capture detail in a range from dark to light. The film lists wide exposure latitude as one of its highlights in the datasheet, but I feel like with professional films that's fairly common to have a wide latitude, especially for a negative film, but it is visible. You can see the wide range of tones with good contrast in the film. I think FP4 may live in the shadow of HP5 a bit, which is unfortunate because it's such a great film. I think maybe a lot of people are hesitant to shoot it because it is a slower film, but I think the results that you get from it are totally worth it. FP4 is a film that I didn't shoot for a long time, and there was no particular draw to it, and I didn't really hear much about it. It is definitely a film that you're going to have to slow down for. You'll probably have to have your camera on a tripod, and I think that's where this film shines best. It's going to give you incredible detail that you will definitely be impressed with when you see the results. It's a film that you just have to try. If you're into shooting landscapes or still lifes, definitely give FP4 a try, and I think you won't be disappointed. Have you guys ever shot FP4 before? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time on The Negative.